Esther, honey. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to have you back on the show. I am just obsessed with your knowledge and your advocacy for women like you and me out there in the world navigating perimenopause and menopause and beyond. And because this is your second time back on the show, I want to have you start with your hormone replacement story. I want to know, what was that journey like? How did you know? And did you have to battle it out to get on hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah, I'm here to tell every woman there is a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. There really is. So it was long, cold, and dark for me initially. I thought I needed hormones. I did not know that I had mold toxicity and Lyme, and was having horrible insomnia. I was having sweats. I was having anxiety. I didn't understand that I was in perimenopause even. I thought I needed progesterone, and my healers were like, no, it's too early. Don't start hormones now. That's going to really throw off your Lyme, and you can't do too many things at once. And so I was told to take Xanax and that it wasn't addictive, which of course it's addictive. It took me like 5 months of horrible rebound withdrawal and rebound anxiety and insomnia to really get off. And I was just committed. I knew, I was like, if I don't get off, I'm never going to get off. But I was taking like an eighth of a pill. Milligrams. I mean, my body was just really sensitive. So I was on Xanax. I did like cognitive behavioral therapy. I thought it was all in my head. I was taking homeopathy and all these things, not sleeping at all. So finally, I worked with a Lyme literate doctor, Tom Moorcroft, and he was like,
But Tom,
yeah. So like, dude,
damn.
So yeah. Because I was like, Tom, I'm dying. Like, I would run my own Dutch tests and interpret them for him. He's like, you're my only patient who like reviews her own lab work. Why don't you let me be your healer? Let me take care of you. I was like, all right, fine, just please. So he put me on hormones, and we've been slowly ramping up ever since. I'm 53 now. I'm in late perimenopause. I do still cycle. They're not all totally regular, but I've been on nice hormone cocktail for, I would say, at least 2.5 years. And we're consistently retesting, playing with dosages, adding things in, cutting back on others. So definitely a moving target, but I can't imagine my life without. And I do biased with testosterone. And then I have oral progesterone in the evenings. And then I also twice a week use vaginal estrogen and testosterone. And that keeps my body really happy, keeps my libido in check, my sleep, my anxiety. I don't have hot flashes, and my bone density is awesome. And cognitively, I'm firing on all cylinders, which is like such a gift.
And did you find that, because that's the big thing, the two things that I hear, and I'd love to hear what you're hearing from your amazing women in your community, is that obviously cycles for a lot of women, even in peri, cycles are still normal. Although the literature will say that's the first indication of perimenopause is your cycles begin to skip. And I have not found that to be the case. Like, I don't think that is the first indication of peri at all. It's, for me, what I hear all the time is brain fog and mood changes. Those are some of the biggest signs that something's shifting, something's changing. Obviously, we know weight, and there's a barrage of symptoms that women can be experiencing in that menopausal transition. But I was curious, when you started taking, and this is I'm just going to make this a little bit more complex. And here you are, you healing from mold and Lyme, which is a whole nother thing, right? Major stealth infections right there that are throwing a lot of things off, including your immune system and your brain and so much, your energy levels. And so did you find that the hormone replacement helped to alleviate the brain fog and the mood changes, some of the bigger symptoms you had? Or did you also find that it was more the protocols you were on for mold and Lyme? Because that's where it gets complicated for so many women. So many women come into peri with other issues. And I find that perimenopause compounds them.
That's right. So the first thing we did was we only started with progesterone first, because at the time my estrogen levels were still okay. So for me, I had been treating Lyme basically from the stomach down. I had been taking binders and taking cholestyramine and trying to get it removed from my liver. And Tom was like, dude, it's in your brain. You have to treat from the top down. So he put me on a very specific cocktail nasal spray. It had actually had a little acetaminophen in it, but it also had like all of these anti-inflammatories and binders, and some antibiotics were in there too. And literally it felt like I remember looking out my office window one day, and all of a sudden it was as if the window had been totally covered in dirt and someone just came and squeegeed it. Like I literally felt the fog lift out of my brain and things were clear and synapses were firing. Then when we started adding in estrogen and in particular testosterone, I noticed that kicked up the healing another notch too, and the mental clarity and the mood also. And I tease my son, he just turned 17, and I say, you know, the only reason why you're still living under my roof is because I'm taking progesterone.
I got hormones. I can't say that to my son. He's only 3.
Well,
I
that's
feel that.
that's the challenge too, is a lot of women are in perimenopause, they're having babies, and then they go right into menopause, and it's late perimenopause. I can't, doing this with a teenager is one thing, doing this with a toddler also very challenging.
I feel
Not
like
for
I got
the weak.
no, I got drop kicked into and it's and unfortunately we don't have a lot of research. I share this on the show a lot of there's more and more women having children in early perimenopause, and then maybe they're breastfeeding for an extended period of time, and that's a default state of menopause in its own right, and then you end that journey and kapow, there's no like sauntering through the doors of peri. You just got to get shoved deep into perimenopause, and that's what it's felt like for me. I have a similar journey we were just talking about, where I've just been diagnosed with mold illness, and it's been something it really punctuated last year. But you go down all of these other pathways first, because we initially didn't think it was mold, but it's the chicken. Oh, is it mold? That's the brain fog. Is it peri? That's the brain fog. Is it a combination of the two? And so I know that so many women are listening to this as they're entering in that menopause transition, and there's other things happening. There's other, health concerns that they're managing. And I find that, again, hormones being a beautiful optimizer can still really be super beneficial, even if you're treating Hashimoto's or you're treating a mold issue or whatever else it is that's going on with you, or it's adrenal fatigue or whatever is going on that you're having to also manage. So I just wanted you to share your story, because it's a complex story. There's many layers to your healing journey, but hormones were and are still a very big part of it. And they really did help to optimize, again, brain function and mood and so many other aspects of your well-being.
And if I can add one more thing is, my cortisol curve was like, if you've ever done a Dutch test, I mean, I wasn't even on the curve. I was below the bottom rung of the chart. And so hormones actually gave me my cortisol curve back. And I had done adrenal support too, but hormones were really the needle mover. But then I lost my mom. We're coming up on a year anniversary, and it was fairly sudden. And my cortisol curve has been pretty low ever since. I haven't been able to get it up yet. I'm working with herbalists on this and doing the emotional healing now. That's really my greatest call to action. Trauma, stress, that all can trigger autoimmune conditions. It can suppress thyroid function. But we want to, not to overwhelm everyone listening, going, oh my God, I'm going to die. But you just these are things to just put pins in as you explore the healing route, and gut health also gets very disrupted with Lyme and mold. There's a lot of dysfunction there, and that can lead to, leaky gut, leaky brain. Decline in hormones can also decrease transit time in the small intestine. So that can also impact how we digest, absorb foods, our brain fog as well, leaky gut, leaky brain. So you just want to be mindful of taking all those pieces into consideration and having a checklist for yourself, right? How's my body interfacing with the environment? Do I have toxins that are disrupting my nervous system, my endocrine system? And then where am I hormonally? And what's my digestion like? And when you have those big rocks managed, the rest really falls into line. But getting those down is key, because especially if they're disrupting your sleep, then that becomes a vicious cycle too. So that's what we really want to work on.
I appreciate that. And, I think it's the awareness around all of this that I think is so, so important. And just note that, again, we get to put a pin in it. Is trauma driving that stress response system? Probably. Is trauma driving those Hashimoto symptoms? Probably. And we get to do that work as well. I just started with a new trauma informed therapist, because not only am I holding a lot right now, but I held a lot back, back then. And so I get to do that work. And so how I always think about the mindset shift is I get to be on my mold protocol. I get to be on my hormones. I get to go to my therapy session and do the trauma work. And I get to optimize my body so that I'm functioning well, because we all get to choose our hard, and it's
we all get to choose our hard.
Yeah, we can suffer in it or we can move through it. And I always believe the only way is through. And so look at us. I know
Look at us.
Hormones.
When I was going through it too, I really was so damn grateful. I was like, just grateful to be able to cobble together enough cash to get things remediated and done. And, my heart goes out to anyone who financially doesn't have the means to access good healers and access healing care, because it's really hard to do it alone. And then also what I began doing was, when I was really sick and lost the ability to work out and lift weights, every night when I meditated, I would envision myself at the squat rack, lifting, muscular, lean. And about 8 months into my healing, I was able to pick up small amounts of weights and not completely crash and die after. So you want to envision your body as if this is already behind you and you're heal and hold now. And then your nervous system and everything will catch up. And, Tom is such a great example. And he and I are similar. Like, his Lyme titers are lit up like a Christmas tree on paper. Me, I never got rid of my Bartonella either. It's just every time we tried to treat it, it took me down. It made me so sick. But all the Lyme, all the mold is gone. And I said to Tom, can we just happily coexist? Can my immune system just manage this as is? He was like, totally, don't even worry about it. So it's also understanding, like, yeah, your healing may not be perfect, may not be linear, but if your immune system is regulated, if you're emotionally calm and happy, your healing doesn't have to be perfect, and you can go on with your life and never live in fear. Like, I never lose a night's sleep worrying like, oh my God, I'm going to get sick. My Bartonella is going to blow up, because I know, okay, if it does, then I'll treat it. I've got the tools to treat it. I've got the resources to treat it. So it's really just like surrendering to the process and letting your body lead and saying, all right, what are you going to tell me today? What do you need from me today? Do you need a little more rest? Can I work out a little harder? Or what foods do I need to put in my body? Or what crap do I need to clear out of my life? All those things bring you to such an elevated place. That's awesome and very joyful.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective. This time last year, I think that's when the mold had hit me really badly, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was, you think it's the thing, it must be adrenals. My TPOs, my antibodies were up, and my thyroid. I'm like, maybe my body knows I'm leaving postpartum, and now it's all just hitting me. I just didn't know. But what I know, it was 10 months away from the weights, and every day I longingly look at them, and I did the same thing. I meditated every night, and I was like, I'm going to get to pick these up again. And right now, now that the labs are in, the labs don't look great, like, how we can take that with a grain of salt, but I can lift heavy weights again. So I'm celebrating, like, whether even though I didn't run the labs this time last year when you probably should have, even with this knowledge, I'm taking it day by day, but there's a lot I can do today that I couldn't do a year ago, literally a year ago today. And so, I'm just doing it day by day. And like you said, just us listening to our bodies and seeing. Today I started my period, so I am not lifting heavy weights today. I get a break, but and tomorrow I get to reevaluate and see how I'm feeling.
Exactly. It's so awesome. Yeah.
I actually want to pivot around that because, one of the things, so obviously menopause is having its moment and, would have loved to have had its moment centuries ago, but here we are in 2020. And, there's a lot of people sharing about menopause, a lot of OBGYNs and medical doctors coming online and sharing. And if anything, there's more conflicting information than ever before. And there's a lot of doctors who will say that they won't look at labs at all, whether late perimenopause or menopause, and they treat symptoms. And then, obviously, there's a camp of many of us, functional space who want to look at labs across the board, whether it's labs for gut, whether it's, we're looking at hormones with the Dutch test, or maybe we're looking at blood labs. And it's a combination of, are we managing symptoms, and are we trying to get you to a physiological or, within the lab range that feels right? Now, for example, I treat my thyroid and I suppress my thyroid a little bit more than some doctors would love, but that's my sweet spot. And so, when I work with my functional doctors and myself, it's that titrating between, am I still mostly within range, but also am I managing my symptoms? You know what I'm saying? And so where do you land on that scope? Even with your Lyme, right? That we still see something's here, but you are feeling significantly better than before. How do you land there? Because even though my estradiol levels are pretty good, girl, I know I would benefit from some estradiol. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm curious where you land.
So it's so funny. As we record this, I literally have a reel up on my feed today about what do you have to test your hormones before you start therapy? The answer is no. Technically, you don't have to, whether it's thyroid or HRT, it's an art and a science. A lot of doctors do treat women based on the symptoms, and women do fine and say it's good enough and I'm feeling good. My symptoms are resolved. My bone density is good. My cardiac inflammation is absolutely fine. The benefit of testing, though, is twofold. One is you're going to be able to see how you methylate your hormones through your liver and also through your gut. Now, this doesn't mean if you have the NTSHR gene
Or COMT.
it doesn't mean, or COMT, it doesn't mean you can't use hormone therapy. It just means it's really nice to test to see genetically what your body is going to need as a cofactor to help you move those hormones through your liver and also your gut. So it's really nice in theory to do the Dutch test. And I also do the GI map to look at that beta glucuronidase. And the other reason is you want to make sure a lot of women, when they start HRT, they have a lot of side effects. They say, oh my gosh, I had a breast reduction. Now my breasts are large again. My fibroids are growing.
My period. I have a period again. You did all the things.
A period again. Yes. And so that's when you do want to see and say, okay, let's, again, what are the best ways to support your body? We really have the tools to do that. I can tell you personally, when I started, my breasts were killing me. They were so tender and sore. And so what I did my Dutch, my methylation was craptastic. And worked with my doctor and put myself on taurine and some trimethylglycine, a B complex, and a cruciferous concentrate. And voila, all of my breast tenderness disappeared. Magnesium. It gives you a window of insight into how your body's going to process hormones, and it helps offset potential side effects. But do you have to? Is there a hard and fast rule? No, we know that there isn't. But I would say if you're not testing initially, please test within 2 to 3 months of taking them and make sure, again, your levels are saturating your tissues, you're absorbing your hormones, you're starting to see an uptick, your symptoms are resolving, all of those things.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Yes. I think everyone should know, if you listen to the show or you listen to Esther on Instagram, that we still need to metabolize these hormones through the liver and the gut. And so hormones are optimizers, but if we're not able to metabolize them properly, then we're going to see some issues. And at the end of the day, the gut and the liver are playing such a big role in how our hormones are being used, how they're working for us, or maybe not necessarily working as well as it could be. But I also want to note too that, GI map and Dutch, that'll run you about $1,000. There's something to be said about trying to figure out, and when I saw the reel too, and it was already a question I was going to ask, and I love that I watched the reels. I was like, bingo. But that, I don't want perfect to get in the way of doing something, so
that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. And yes, you can absolutely, right. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. Some people test through blood that won't show your methylation. It will at least show your hormone levels. Some people use saliva tests to see how you're saturating your tissues. Others use 24-hour urine collection, if not the Dutch and GI map. So again, many ways to skin a cat. I say just whatever practitioner you work with, make sure they're very literate in the testing they use. And I do like a combination of tests. testing, like blood and serum. And I think that's a beautiful, happy medium.
I appreciate your expertise in that. And I think you and I both agree that all of us could benefit from loving up on our gut and liver a little bit more for all the things that they have to do in terms of opening up our detox pathways. I mean, even our, just stepping away, just even our children, the amount of gut and liver issues we're seeing with them, with just living in this world. As a mama, my son is on a gentle pathway opener, just to keep things going, especially with mold being in our house and whatnot. So I just wanted to just kind of bring that to the forefront that every day your gut and your liver are having to filter and move things out, including your hormones, especially if you're taking hormones. I want to spend a little bit more time on hormone replacement, but something that I'm seeing a lot, especially women in perimenopause, that women are being recommended the Mirena IUD to manage symptoms because it's localized, quote unquote, progestin. And then on top of the IUD to manage whatever symptoms are going on there, if they're still dealing with sleep and anxiety issues, then they're being brought onto the oral micronized progesterone and then potentially vaginal estrogen or maybe even a transdermal estradiol. And so here we've got the progestin, the synthetic progesterone, and then we're also treating with actual hormones, and it just feels like a cluster of a mess of a situation. And I get that, in terms of contraception, and if that's the decision that you make, I support that. I honor your agency. But to use it as a way of symptom management, I'm curious how you feel about this.
It is what I unapologetically deem as lazy medicine. And for practitioners, when there is more than enough research out there, I mean, I'm a dietitian and I have access to the same studies that any physician does, that any person has. But for them to not do the research and say hormones are scary, hormones are dangerous, when the North American Menopause Society has updated their position papers twice, saying hormone replacement is safe, it's indicated, it's beneficial, especially when the FDA has approved bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, at least for progesterone, estrogen, and vaginal estrogen, not yet for testosterone. But, it's really shameful and egregious. Women don't have access to it. And so as a result, they are put on the pill and the IUD to, as you mentioned, like suppressing symptoms. So the complication with that are the mental health effect and the toll that low progesterone and estrogen and testosterone can have on a woman's brain. So with synthetic progestins, the benefit of these products is they do provide birth control because they naturally suppress your progesterone, so you cannot ovulate. But in the presence of estrogen, that can be spiking up to 30 on any given day, which is why a lot of doctors don't want to test in perimenopause. When that happens, in the absence, you have spiking estrogen and you have very low progesterone coupled with that. So you can get like crime scene periods. You can still have heavy periods. It's less likely on the pill and IUD, but you can still have them. A and B, you start to feel a ton of anxiety because progesterone is a precursor to GABA, which is a very calming neurotransmitter. It's nature's chill pill, helps with anxiety, but also helps with insomnia. So, and last but not least, it really keeps estrogen in check. So you're not passing clots when you have periods and you're not getting super heavy periods. So instead, or if you are currently on the pill for birth control or the IUD, then yes, you can start when you notice that the second half of the month, like you're not feeling yourself mood wise, you're extra depressed, you're extra irritable because estrogen's like the lion and progesterone's like the beautiful soft kitten, right? So without the presence of progesterone, you can be really, I call it meno rage. You can really be super duper ragey and just feel out of control with your moods and unhappy. Like no one wants to feel this way. So if that's the case and you notice your sleep's taking a nosedive, can add in progesterone either days 14 to 28 of your cycle. If you're early perimenopause, or if your sleep is circling the drain, then just you can include it every night. I mean, your doctor will have the final say, but that's absolutely an option. And then when it's time for you to transition off the pill, when your FSH and your LH are super low, you're not really producing eggs, you're not really ovulating, that's a good time to transition onto bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And a good practitioner who's hormone literate will transition you to the highest possible dose.
Yes. Yeah.
The highest possible dose, because you will have, very likely, you will have some hot flashes, some withdrawal coming off the pill and IUD. The pill is administering hormones 5 times the dose of bioidenticals. Bioidenticals are a microdose. So that's my other frustration with synthetic birth control is a woman can easily be on synthetic hormones via birth control for 30 years of her life. And then it comes time for menopause and they say, no, you can't go on hormones. Those are going to cause cancer. Like, really? Because they're safe. They're very low dose. They're microdose. And even like the Framingham nurses study looked at women using vaginal estrogen for 18 years. It stayed completely localized, did not change serum concentrations of hormones, did not have an increased risk of cancer. And even there are women out there having mastectomies and partial hysterectomies or having their ovaries removed to offset the risk of cancer. And often those doctors will say risk to benefit ratio, the quality of life issues, far more important, where you can benefit from the use of bioidentical hormone therapy, especially if you've had the organs removed that could potentially have cancer cells in them. So we're growing, we're learning in this process. So yes, birth control is not menopause care. Birth control is birth control. So don't confuse the two.
Yeah, I think what's really disheartening to me is I agree it's lazy medicine is that women will be on birth control well into their 50s and will have no idea when they even went into menopause. And then abruptly just the rug taken out of them, like just shoot, and nothing in terms of replacing after they're taken off of the pill. That to me is just never okay. And I talk to women every day where that's the situation, where they were told they needed to be on birth control until they were 55 years old and then had no idea when they, and women come to me like, I don't even know if I'm in menopause. I'm like, oh, you're in menopause, but you just didn't know because you were on the pill the whole time, because they probably put it on, put you on it in your mid 40s and just kept you on it for a decade. It has its own side effects. I just interviewed Dr. Sarah Hill again, just talking about the nuances of this, particularly in midlife, how we're filling women in this department in terms of leveraging the pill when we really need to be using bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, especially for the psychological and brain benefits. And so I'm so grateful I'm having this conversation with you because, yeah, it just feels like a very kind of piecemeal approach of how, women, one, are being put on the IUD and then, they're still struggling with a lot of the psychological things. And they're like, okay, we'll also give you permetrium too. But I'm just, and I get it. It's just for the contraception, but I find that they're being put on the, the Mirena IUD for perimenopause. It's the gold standard for perimenopause. And then we're trying to put more hormones into the mix to kind of manage that. And so I just feel like there's a better way to manage it.
Absolutely. And, for those of you listening, I just want to touch on the hysterectomy piece too. If you've had a hysterectomy, whether it's a partial or a full, you still need progesterone, even if you don't have a uterus, because progesterone benefits sleep. Progesterone benefits cognition and learning and mood. We have progesterone receptors all over the body, not just in the uterus. So don't be shy about seeing a doctor. Hey, I want to get some oral. And that also, it's so inexpensive. And it's like the quality of life issues are so, so important. And offsetting risk of disease, all of that, sustaining gray matter in the brain. I feel like we could clear out nursing home floors filled with women with dementia in diapers who have UTIs and are chronically hospitalized with just the use of hormones and some vaginal estrogen. It would be a game changer. It's so heartbreaking to me. I looked at my grandmother, I looked at my mother, both had issues from lack of hormones. And my mom was on Premarin back in the day. And I was working for a functional medicine doctor. And I was like, the Women's Health Initiative study came out. And I was like, Mom, you've got to stop that. You're going to get clots. And her father had died of a stroke. And I was like, you're going to get clots. You have to stop it. And she did. But then she did have memory changes. And she certainly had really bad bladder incontinence issues, which was so frustrating. I'm like, oh my God, if only I knew, then what I know now.
It was so scary, the way that information was presented and how abruptly it was presented. And obviously so much of it has been redacted today. There are so many women post breast cancer or other cancers who are just not being allowed to get on even vaginal estrogen, women fighting for a better quality of life to be on hormones and doctors continuing to deny them because of all of that fear mongering that unfortunately is still very prevalent today. Although I know that the tide is turning, here we are, women suffering needlessly because of a lack of information or just so much fear and concern around liability when it just isn't there. If anything, the liability is women not being on hormones, not keeping them off of them.
Amen. Absolutely. That's exactly it. And, to me, I always talk about this with Annika and Becca. I'm like, who is going to change the medical school curriculum around here? How do we change that? Because once that's changed, then we can do it. But most young doctors coming out of medical school are taught to fear hormones. They're not, even in residency, it's really not taught. We're just perpetuating generation after generation of this.
And no, it's got Lynn. I think again, I do think the tide is turning. I think I think we're another decade away, to be honest. But I know it's
right.
shifting and changing, and the information is getting out there. And if there was ever a time where I appreciated social media, and really educating or at least sparking the conversation, it's around this. I would love to talk about, and I the same thing. Even 10 years ago, when my mom, she had some early short-term side effects around hormones, and I think they were synthetic hormones.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, don't take them. And now she's in her early 60s, and I'm asking her revisit. I'm having her we're looking at all of her cardiovascular markers, but at 63, I want my mom to thrive and to be doing great. And she's doing great now, but I know that she's technically out of the window, as one would say, but I know that is shifting as well. And so I want to speak into I personally think the best time to get on hormones is perimenopause. Like, the second you start to feel things shift, jump on the wagon, girls, and then ride the train. And so what's your recommendation around when we should be looking at the start of hormone therapy, and how long should we ride that train?
Early intervention is key, and you can ride that train till you're dead. I joke, I'm going to have a green juice.
It's going to be a patch on your butt.
Right. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. There are women who don't tolerate progesterone well orally, and they put it up the can. I'm like, ladies, that is an off-label use, but I guess if it works for you, who am I to say no? But in all seriousness, the best time to start is early intervention. You don't need to wait until a year after finishing your cycles. In fact, the research shows that we lose the most bone density and muscle in the shortest period of time when we start, in those critical years when we start menopause. And you can take all the calcium, vitamin D, and magnesium you want, but estrogen has the strongest effect by far on bone density. So I agree. You bring in progesterone, even if it's the last 2 weeks of your cycle. You can also bring in Vitex or Chaste Tree to really get your ovarian production of progesterone more robust. But if that's not really cutting it, then progesterone last 2 weeks of your cycle, vaginal estrogen if you're having symptoms. And then usually, estrogen falls later, and testosterone is a wild card. About 50% of women don't need testosterone, 25% it's too high, 25% it's too low. So that really depends. But and again, if you go to the North American Menopause Society, they have approved the use of hormones for 10 years post menopause. The problem is, I have women I've treated in their 70s in my practice, and they say, I really want to go off my hormones. And then they're feeling great, and their skin's luminous, and their cognition and mood and energy is fantastic. And they say, it's time for me to go off. I'm like, don't think that's a great idea, but it's your body, your choice. They go off. The hot flashes return, the insomnia returns, right? The brain fog, the crepiness, like the skin wrinkles up overnight. And they're like, oh my God, I'm going back on. So at that point, it's a real quality of life issue. And remember, the benefits of hormones are cardioprotective. They help prevent plaquing on the arteries. Dr. Pam Smith has beautiful studies in her books about hormones and the anti-plaquing effect. They also prevent insulin resistance, which is pretty incredible. They help prevent, now they're not the only thing that helps prevent weight gain. Obviously, you need a protein-forward, fiber-rich diet. You need activity, walking. You need some strength training, but hormones do play a big role because they're helping you sleep. So they're managing your insulin regulation, which manages your weight. So they also, again, preserve gray matter in the brain and preserve bone density. So all of those things are just so darn important. And also, like, again, libido, preventing UTIs and all the genitourinary symptoms of menopause, a weak pelvic floor, incontinence, all of those things. So if you are, here's another pro tip, if you are using vaginal estrogen, please apply to the urethra and the clitoris. Very important. If you are terrified of vaginal estrogen, but you want to treat the symptoms of dryness, you can also use vaginal DHEA. So Annika Becca makes her beautiful Jolva, which can go externally on the labia and the vulva, but internally you can do DHEA to offset the thinning of and the loss of collagen in the vaginal walls and optimize hydration and lubrication.
I mean, who doesn't? None of us want the
Dried up old lady.
Well, but the metabolic consequences, the neuroinflammatory consequences, the cardiovascular consequences of not being on these hormones. And that's really one of the things a friend of mine said, who's an amazing researcher. Menopause isn't really going anywhere amazing. I mean, there's agency and us giving zero F's about things, but like metabolically and cardiometabolically, like losing those hormones isn't the win. It isn't the win. And, we have every right and we deserve to replace them so that we're thriving. And like you said, a woman let's say she's been on hormones and she decides she wants to get off them at 69 or 79 or whatever, it is a drop off the cliff. There isn't a gradual things start to come, things start to pop up for you. It is immediate once you get off those hormones. And so I am very much of the mindset of ride it to the very end, because that's going to really help you in some of the biggest areas of chronic conditions that we're looking to avoid.
That's right. And if we want to show up for our families and future generations and ourselves, meaningful conversations where we can actually string a sentence of words together. Here I am stumbling over that. How's that for irony? But like, if we really want to be participatory in our lives and not just like watching life go by when we're just sitting there mute and confused and tired, and then hormones are a very, very important piece. And again, a little bit goes a long way. I'm not talking about pellets. I'm talking about transdermal, topical estrogen and testosterone, vaginal estrogen and or DHEA and or testosterone, and oral progesterone at night. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's that simple. And again, dosing can be played with, all of this. I know we haven't gotten into pellets. I'd love for you to speak really, really quickly on that as well. Like you said, testosterone. I know testosterone is all the rage at the moment a little bit. And as you mentioned, some women were able to have a decent amount of testosterone well into our 60s and 70s. And so I think it really depends on symptoms and levels. But what is your stance on testosterone really quickly, given that, some women are being put on that first as early 40s.
Well, we have to remember that testosterone is the predominant hormone in a woman's body before perimenopause. So that's why not every woman needs it. If you're doing a lot of upper body strength training and eating a protein-rich diet, you're going to see a bump in your testosterone. I mean, I remember running labs in the early part of my career. I ran testosterone levels on a woman who is in her 60s, and her levels did go up. And we didn't even have her on hormones. She just was doing strength training. We worked on her diet. I had her on some supplements. Her levels did go up. So, but testosterone, again, the problem is there's a lot of med spas out there who are not licensed, and there are zero clinical research studies that. There is a doctor who will correct me on this and say, oh no, there's studies done on pellets. I tried looking those studies up. I could not find them online. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I just could not find them anywhere. So I have seen zero clinical research studies on pellets. The problems with pellets is so pellets are surgically inserted, like a little tunnel is dug out in your butt muscle, okay? And boop, the pellets are dropped in, you're closed up, and those hormones do not clear from your body at minimum of 4 to 5 months, upwards of 6 months. So once they're in, you have zero control of the release. They're often jacking up your level. So imagine you're like really, again, circling the drain with very low testosterone, and all of a sudden you have levels 4 to 5 times of your baseline in a very short period of time. So what happens? Well, you can get hair growth on your chin coupled with hair loss on your head. You can get a lot of irritability and rage. Some of my clients have gained as much as 10 pounds in a month. And also your libido, while it sounds really fun to have a high libido, it's hyperactive to the point where it actually isn't enjoyable anymore. It's very uncomfortable. And then what happens is as the pellets start to get detoxed and the levels start to decrease from your system, even though they're jacked up to hyper physiologic doses, you're still going to feel the symptoms of coming down, more depressed, more fatigue, more lethargy. So it's really problematic because you really can't regulate the dosage. Whereas if you're using, again, topical testosterone cream or gel, which by the way, if you want to get your testosterone covered by insurance, you can ask for the formulation of testosterone from your pharmacy at about 1/10 of the dose. You still need a doctor's prescription, but using it just transdermally topically, you can adjust the dose the next day. Right. And so you have a lot more control. If you're not tolerating it, you cut it back. If you feel you can bump it up, your doctor will say, all right, do 2 clicks on your cream instead of 1. Whatever it is, you have a lot more control over the situation. You do it gently. We're not trying to restore your hormone levels to that of a 20-year-old, which brings me to my next point. If I can also get on my soapbox here, there are practitioners who insist on cycling menopausal women off and on hormone replacement therapy. So they're still getting a bleed. They're still, trying to mimic having a period for as long as you can. Again, there isn't the published research to support this. Often this comes from anecdotal evidence, which anecdotal evidence can be very beneficial, but a woman is designed to stop menstruating at one point. So I'm curious to see if more research comes out that shows it's beneficial for your ovarian reserves to just keep on trucking. But once you're done, you're kind of done. So I'm kind of sitting by with the popcorn watching what happens with that one. But I've spoken out against it on Instagram and gotten pretty heavily trolled on that one. So I'm just like, okay, have it your way, knock yourself out. But I'm a scientist. I do need some research behind
Yeah, I think that's what
behind those delivery systems.
totally. I think that is what's making things complicated is that we're in a way, it feels a little bit like the Wild West now that it's kind of open season for all of this. And people are playing and figuring things out. And again, the research stopped for 20 years for the most part. And so here we are back in the saddle with looking at this research and waiting for more research to come out. And all the while you've got different doctors doing different things. And I think every woman needs to tap into their own deep intuition for the most part. Again, menopause is menopause. I say continuous. I do know a lot of the people who are recommending cycling, a lot of it. And I see so many women doing well on continuous. And so I land where you land, but there are friends and colleagues of mine who I know are really pushing the need to cycle it, at least progesterone. And as a cycling person myself, that's where I am at the moment. But I know that that's going to shift for me unless research dictates otherwise. So I do appreciate you bringing that up again.
Yeah.
Pellets all of a sudden and this all of a sudden. And like women are being advertised and marketed to, and it's like, what's the right thing? And again, do we go to physiological dose? Do we just manage symptoms? Those are the things that I know we touched upon today, but those are the questions that a lot of my audience, they want to know. They're like, how do I manage this? And in a way that's going to be the most beneficial for me. And I think that you are really navigating that with your community and with your women very well. And is one of the reasons why I want to do on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, my dear, where can we find you? What you got? What do you got for us?
Yes. So please go to Gorgeous Esther on Instagram and please get on my list at Esther Blum. You will get my free Happy Hormone cocktail, but also you will get updates. I'm putting together a really great event for World Menopause Day. It's going to be virtual, so everyone can come. That's in October. So get on my list because I have so much clinical research I send out every week. I send out a love letter to you all to keep you in the know on how to make menopause your bitch.
Yes. Well, thank you, my love. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you
for your expertise.